We're back for the preview show, everybody. Welcome aboard. Harry Powell is here with me as always. We're going to take a look at a couple of fights from the UFC São Paulo. We're going to nitpick at this card. We're going to come at it and talk about maybe 5-6 fights perhaps. We're not going to break it down from top to tail. We will do that on the breakdown show coming next Tuesday after this card. Harry is with me as always. You're doing well, good sir. We're back to UFC action this weekend.
Supposedly, yeah. I don't know. I think we're kind of riding at this point. We're still kind of riding high off the Francis Ngannou boxing bout that went down, and so that's no unnecessary shake against MMA. I just think it's one of those things where we witnessed something monumental in sporting history, and when we're then just sort of expected to move right back into the run-of-the-mill things, that's kind of difficult for us to do. But a good enough card here in Sao Paulo. Fantastic main event, and so at least one half of it, fantastic main event, and yeah, there's some good fights on the card, so it'll be a good night of fights. No problem with that whatsoever.
Absolutely. Look at the main event itself: Jailton Almeida versus Derrick Lewis. Lewis coming in here on short notice. Harry. Originally, we were supposed to have Curtis Blades, and we would have had a particular interest in that fight, given what we've seen from Almeida in the past, in the fact that he likes to get his opponents down, he likes to insert his will, he likes to dominate in the grappling exchanges, and Curtis Blades would have offered, I guess, some questions on whether he would have been able to do that to him, and I think that was the kind of most intriguing kind of question or kind of thought process that was going around that fight. Obviously, we don't have that fight anymore. Derrick Lewis has taken it on short notice, and we're kind of back to square one with Jailton Almeida here, Harry, with another test, a good test in Derrick Lewis, but a very winnable test in certain terms if he does get the fight down safely and does get Derrick Lewis out of there early. I mean, we're just kind of going to be back to square one with Jailton Almeida after this fight and wondering how good he is, how far he can go in the division right now in the UFC. And, me and Shawnee kind of go about it on the Contender this week over on the Patreon, just talking in depth about, how he fares out in the heavyweight division and what the future may hold for him, and along with the light heavyweight division as well, because, Jailton Almeida at one time, Harry, weighed in at 215 pounds for a heavyweight fight. He has since just irked himself up a little bit. So we're talking about a guy here that could be competitive at 205, but he's just taking guys down and trucking guys at the heavyweight division, and doing it in massively impressive fashion. And look at Derrick Lewis is next in line for him on Saturday night. And I would expect, to be honest, not going to talk about the result itself straight away, but you'll be expecting Jailton Almeida to come in here and get the job done on Saturday night. Your thoughts on him as a fighter, this matchup itself, and your overall thoughts on everything, I guess.
So I sort of completely agree with your thoughts on the Curtis Blades performance. It would have been a fantastic test for both men, frankly, because it's not often that you see fellas try to take Curtis Blades down. It's not often that you see them succeed. And it's certainly not often that you see Curtis Blades get taken down and sort of meandered through a variety of positional dominance and submission threats that Jailton Almeida has given to every other opponent he's in with, right? I also think Curtis Blades has underrated striking. And so it would have been really interesting to see what would happen if Blades had just kept it on the feet, and just asked Jailton Almeida that specific question, let alone what's Jailton like off his back, right? We just don't know. And so I think it's a real shame that specific bout has fallen out. And I agree with you entirely that fair play to Derrick Lewis, one, for taking it. This is a fight that, sure, I mean, I don't think many fighters are looking to take a bout with Jailton Almeida. But I imagine if I'm in Derrick Lewis's shoes, it's kind of a win-win. He gets another paycheck. He's on a decent payout. Again, he saves a UFC main event, which, win, lose, or draw, is going to stand him in good stead with the UFC. The UFC already like him, right? They have no problem with him as a fighter. They have no problem with his contract situations. And it's not like he's going to come in here and take a hellish knockout, right? It's more likely that if he gets taken down, he'll give his back and Jailton will take it and then he'll choke him. And then, it is what it is. But certainly Derrick Lewis has tried over the last few fights of his career to actually get in shape. We were all unbelievably shocked that he came in with abs in his last performance. And genuinely looked like he was trying to be an athlete. He said that he'd taken S&C seriously and his diet seriously for the first time in his career. And so, okay, you could maybe argue that it's a little bit too late for Derrick Lewis, but fair play to him for putting in the yards now and trying to eke out the best parts of his career as much as possible. In terms of the fight itself, we know that Derrick Lewis's Achilles heel is when people try and grapple. We know that if they stand and bang and they want to be in the pocket and trade, he is fantastic there. And Jailton Almeida is not going to do that. Like, somebody posted a stat up on Twitter the other day, which was like time taken for Jailton Almeida to shoot. And in his last performance against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, it was 4 seconds. I suspect we're going to see something similar here against Derrick Lewis, where it's probably going to be a sub 30-second shot. And if he can take him down, look, Derrick Lewis is extremely explosive. And so he might be able to get up once or twice or drag himself up against the fence a couple of times. But if it gets into a washing machine of takedown attempts from Jailton Almeida, I suspect that Derrick Lewis will succumb to one of them. And Jailton Almeida is certainly a sniper. But like you've said, and you mentioned it, right? It's, can Jailton Almeida take the fight down safely? Because Derrick Lewis has a wicked uppercut, and we've seen that he's got fucking flying knees as well. So, yeah, I'm very interested to see if and when Jailton Almeida can get it down.
I think if this fight was made even this time last year, Harry, we might have even a worse opinion on Derrick Lewis's chances coming in here, because at the end of the day, it's the heavyweight division. Derrick Lewis packs a lot of power. He packs it throughout the fight as well, from the first bell to the starting bell. It might not be as effective at the end of the fight for him, but he's still a dangerous guy. And look, we've had conversations before about, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations in the cage. And in terms of what I mean is, we know Jailton Almeida as a grapple heavy fighter. So, we ask ourselves questions with other fighters. Do you put yourself into a situation where you can kind of maybe want to stand and bang with Derrick Lewis to showcase your striking a little bit? Let me finish off. In this case, and I think in a lot of cases in the heavyweight division, you just simply can't do that, because one punch and you're done. And obviously that's more of a trait that you want to be doing up and coming as a mixed martial artist, more so than at the elite level. So one would argue that, you could dominate Derrick Lewis here in the grappling department, and then maybe, let him up, if you want to, for lack of a better term, let him up, and maybe when he's a little bit more tireder and sluggish, kind of maybe strike with him then. But you can't even do that with Derrick Lewis, because he's, like I said, he's so dangerous from the first bell to the end bell. So if you're Jailton Almeida, what you do here is you go in, you get the job done. In his opinion, with relative ease, if you can get the takedown straight and take this away from Derrick Lewis. I believe, I am going to say it. I wasn't going to say it. There are at times Derrick Lewis looks for a way out of there, and Jailton Almeida has got to go in there early and give him a reason to want to get out of there. And I think if he does that, it should be another straightforward win for him on the night. I'm sure that you would agree with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And frankly, I really don't have a problem with Jailton going in and testing his hands. If I'm really honest, I really don't have a problem with it. I think if he wants to go in and he wants to just ask himself the question, then why shouldn't he do that? Now he's playing with fire. Don't get me wrong. And if you play with fire, sometimes you get burnt, right? But I would not have a drastic problem if he goes out and decides he wants to try and stand even for a couple of minutes, because he knows he has the wrestling in the back pocket. If I'm his coach, am I telling him to do that? You're fucking mental. Absolutely not am I telling him to do that. But in the same vein, I have no problem if he does decide he wants to go and do that. But I agree with you entirely. I think as and when Jailton wants to take this down, he probably will. And then, yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
It absolutely is tough. I mean, you were right in saying, we're still living off the Ngannou mania here, but I think come Saturday night, I'm excited to see Jailton Almeida go in there, even though, the Curtis Blades fights, I would have been, that to me, and Jailton Almeida's rise, the Curtis Blades fight was a kind of an edge of seat fight. I would have sat up for that one and seen how he would have been able to tackle that problem. But I fear we're probably just getting a little bit more of a better version of what Jailton Almeida faced against Jairzinho Rosenstruck in his last fight. Obviously a couple of more wrinkles that Derrick Lewis can add, but it'll be interesting to see if Almeida can go in there, get the job done in relative easy fashion. We'll look forward to breaking that fight down. Next on tap, the co-main event, Harry, another big up-and-comer from Brazil in the UFC is Gabriel Bonfim, currently riding an undefeated record of 15-0. Has been in the UFC now for a couple of fights and is currently, since he's moved from the Contender Series, is 2-0 inside with wins over Mansour Lazzez and Trevin Giles. He's getting the veteran test in the co-main event here against Nicholas Dalby, who is not going to be an easy fight for him, Harry. Would you agree?
I do agree, yeah. And of the two Bonfim brothers, I think Ishmael is certainly the one that I'm slightly higher on. I think that Gabriel. I think Gabriel is the one I'm slightly higher on. Ishmael is somebody that's just a little bit too reckless, just a little bit too crazy. But Dalby is a fighter that you have to take super seriously. 22-4 is a fucking fantastic record in mixed martial arts, especially with 2 UFC stints in there. So if I am, excuse me, sorry, Jesus, if I am.
You almost coughed up a lung there talking about this one, Harry.
Sure, I did. If I am on theme, I am going in and I'm trying to measure myself against Dalby. I'm trying to make sure that as and when my opportunities come, I'm going to take them and take them properly. And I'm just going to make sure that I keep my P's and Q's in the right places. Because if I don't, Dalby will punish you. He is a very, very, very solid, well put together technical fighter that knows how to win fights. And when you are somebody like Ishmael Bonfim, or Gabriel Bonfim, frankly, when you are one of those types of fighters, it is absolutely imperative that you are putting yourself in the best position against these types of veterans. And so, yeah, I mean, good Lord, we have a big test if you are somebody like Gabriel Bonfim in the co-main event.
That's the thing, because for me, with Bonfim, he's been going out there, he's been putting guys away, but I'm not saying that you're not going to be able to put a guy like Nicholas Dalby away, but it is going to be very, very hard to put a guy like Nicholas Dalby away. Getting into veteran status here now, I'm delighted that he's gotten this opportunity, because Dalby's run in the UFC in recent times is 3 wins on the row, wins over Claudio Silva, Warley Alves, and Muslim Salikov in his last fight. Your reward for those 3 wins is going in there against the 15-0 phenom in Brazil behind enemy lines. But I'm sure if there's anybody that's up for the task, it's Nicholas Dalby, and his toughness is almost a secret weapon, Harry, isn't it?
You're damn fucking right it is. Yeah, like it's one of those things. He's one of those fighters where he kind of just thrives when he can bite down on his mouthpiece and force his fight, right? He's talked ad nauseum about his mental health, about his sort of road through MMA and the meandering avenues that it's taken him on. But it feels like now he's just become the man that he is, right? And that's allowed him to fight with freedom. He's not going to win a title, right? We're not going to be seeing Nicholas Dalby in title contention or anything like that. But it's allowed him and continues to allow him to just be free in the octagon. And that is a dangerous man. That is a dangerous man to go in against. And so I'm very excited for this fight, actually. I think competitively, it's a fantastic fight, and we'll really get to learn something about one of those Bonfim brothers after this performance.
100%. I think it's the perfect fight to put in Bonfim right now, just to see where he is at, because like I said, Dalby ain't going to be easy to get out there. And I'm looking forward to this one, I've got to say. Moving on to the next one, Rodrigo Nascimento versus Dontel Mays in the heavyweight division. We're back to mid-card mediocrity in the heavyweight division on these fight nights cards. We're not going to spend too much time on that, but we will stop at Cao Borralho versus Abos Magomedov in the middleweight division. And you've got to look at this fight as the UFC's attempt to furthermore try to boost Borralho up the rankings at 185, Harry. Look, we've been keeping a watchful eye on Borralho ever since he's initiated into the UFC through the Contender Series. Has since gone 4-0. Ghazi Omar Gaziev, Amrin Petrosyan, Mukam Muradov, and Michael Olyazhenchuk. Probably the 4 most difficult fighters' names to pronounce in a row there. So credit to me for not really fucking it up, to be honest. And he comes in here against Abos Magomedov. He likes a guy with an exotic last name, does Borralho. How do you see this fight shaping out? Obviously, Magomed is coming back in off of a loss to Sean Strickland, which didn't look great at now, but looks a little bit better given the circumstances in the middleweight division. To have a loss from the current champion isn't all that embarrassing. But this is going to be another tricky fight against Borralho, but a well-matched fight, that being said, and I'm not ruling out Magomedov in this in the slightest. What do you think?
I don't think we know again. Like, I still don't think we know really who Abos Magomedov is like. I really don't think we do. And something in this specific fight, we will certainly begin to find out, because somebody like Borralho, we know what we're getting. We're getting some rudimentary striking that's improving. Sure, no problem with that improving, but he's a grappler, right? He is a grappler. He wants to take the fight down. He wants to have Magomedov on his back. He wants to be in positions that he's forcing Magomedov to carry the weight and do this and do that and do the next thing, right? And so if I am Abos Magomedov, the answer is to get my distance, get my range, show that I have a better gas tank than I did in my last performance, and just go out and fight the fight that you are willing and ready and wanting to fight. Whether he can do that, whether Borralho comes in and says, sure, look, that's grand, I got no problem, but I'm going to, go out and do my fighting things now. I don't know. But I'd like to think that Magomedov could show a better performance than he did against Sean Strickland. I agree completely that the UFC are 110% matching Borralho in a way that allows him to continue his divisional trajectory without actually taking too many tests. And that's fine. That's the UFC's prerogative, right? I don't necessarily have a huge problem with that. But yeah, I'm hoping that we just get some answers, frankly, on both of these fighters,
Yeah, and I think those answers are going to be provided, to be fair. Look at it with Magomedov, we said he didn't perform all that well in that fight with Strickland, and maybe it was a factor that Strickland didn't made him look that way. We'll find out though against Borralho, who, like I said, was impressive in his run. So someone will have to win, someone will have to lose. I'm excited to see what happens in the 185-pound division. We'll see who emerges into the rankings out of both of those gentlemen. Keeping at 185, I've got to bring this up just for the simple fact I just want to announce Rodolfo Vieira as the second best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the entire world, behind Fluffy Hernandez, who goes in against Armin Petrosyan in the middleweight division. Harry, any thoughts on Petrosyan and Vieira coming in? Obviously, we're dealing with Petrosyan's win over Christian Leroy Duncan, which is a good win. We're high on Christian Leroy Duncan here. Coming into this fight, Rodolfo Vieira, multi-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion and black belt, took out Cody Brundage by arm triangle, went back to the trough, Harry, in the last fight, and went back to his submissions. None of this standing around on the feet stuff and messing around and getting caught and getting tired. He went back to what got him to the dance, and that was his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in his last fight. And I think he needs to do the same in this one as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Look, I mean, to me, the answer is simple for Rodolfo here, right? This is a striker versus a grappler. Which one is going to get the fight down? Is Armin Sorry? Jesus, if it was Armin Sorry, fuck me, this would be a different fight, wouldn't it, lads? Is Rodolfo Vieira able to take the fight down? Is he going to be able to pace himself? How many shots is he going to take? We know that he's very, very tough. We've seen how tough he is in that octagon. how much damage are we going to have to see him take? And these are all the questions. But for Petrosyan, it certainly is one of those where that's a winnable fight, right? This is a winnable fight. If he could stop the takedown, then he will certainly win on the feet. He hits very hard. He's a crafty striker. But can he stop the takedown? Can he stop the takedown for long enough? Is he able to force Rodolfo to really, really battle in the positions that Rodolfo doesn't want to be in? Honestly, I don't know is the answer. But it's going to be fun while it lasts, for sure.
It definitely will be. We mentioned one half of the Bonfim brothers and the co-main event, Harry. I guess we've got to mention Ishmael, who's coming in against Vince Pichel for the first fight on the main card. This being a 6-fight main card on Saturday night. Bonfim and Vince Pichel will take the opening slot on the main card. How do you see that fight going down? Bonfim looking to respond after I believe his last fight was the knockout to Terence McKinney. Benoit Saint-Denis, excuse me. He had a win before that against Terence McKinney, but came up against a good, durable fighter in Benoit the last time out. That was a hellacious fight. He'll be looking to get back into the win column against a tough and old wily veteran in Vince Pichel. Hey,
I like Vince Pichel a lot, and I really am not sure how this fight goes for Bonfim. If I'm really honest, Bonfim is a wild fighter. He's somebody that really likes to put his pedal to the metal. And look, I don't necessarily have a problem with that either. But Vince Pichel is a wily, crafty veteran, knows his way around the octagon, knows his way around a man, knows his way around a fighter, and he hits quite hard for a man of his age and his size. And so I really am relatively excited to see how this specific fight goes down. I think this is a great test for Bonfim. If he goes out and he does the wild, crazy stuff and he's able to get Vince Pichel out of there with that, then cool, I'll start taking some notice, no problem whatsoever. But I suspect that somebody like Vince Pichel, who is able to, 1, take a shot, 2, land a shot, and 3, he's very, very, very knowledgeable in terms of that veteran craft that he has, this could be a tough fight for Bonfim.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Very well said. Not too much to add on top of that. I'm going to skip through the next two, Harry. That's Elvis Brenner versus Esteban Rebovich. And that's not necessarily because I think they're bad fights or anything like that. We're just trying to keep this a little bit more nip and tuck. If you're looking for more detailed opinions on these fighters, definitely tune into the breakdown on Tuesday, where we'll discuss this fight. Daniel Marcos, we've seen him take home a split decision win over Davy Grant. Getting a win over Davy, not an easy thing to do. He brings his undefeated win. I know there's a little bit of controversy around that decision as well, but look, he comes in against Victor Hugo, 24-4 from Brazil. So it'd be exciting to see what happens in that fight as well. A fight I definitely want to stop on because it just has madness and craziness written all over. And that's Alessio Zaleski, who's just known as Alessio Zaleski. If you want to call him his proper full name, I believe it's Alessio Zaleski dos Santos. He's been called in the past. Will go in against Rinat Fakhretdinov in the 170-pound division. Zaleski coming in off a 2-fight win streak with wins over Benoit Saint-Denis and Abubakar Nurmagomedov. 2 solid wins there coming in here against Fakhretdinov, who himself was out and did very well against Kevin Lee and Brian Battle in recent fights as well. But, with Brian Battle, I'm not totally convinced on Brian Battle here, if I'm being honest. And I definitely wasn't convinced with Kevin Lee's last performance. So we've got a true test here for Fakhretdinov against Alessio Zaleski, who always brings the heat. And I think this is going to be a fantastic fight, Harry.
I completely agree. This to me is probably fight of the night, if I'm really, really honest. I think this is fight of the night. I think that both of these fighters bring it. And Alessio did... fuck. I've absolutely bottled his name. Alessio
Either you or me.
Zaleski dos Santos is just one of those guys who is able to pull himself out of the fire and always produces. And so I'm in. Sign me up. I got no problem. Whenever he fights, I'm in. Sign me up. So yeah, I love this fight. I think it's a fantastic one. And as I said, I think it's fight of the night.
We don't really talk about predictions on this, but I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on how this. These two are so unpredictable in the way they fight. It is so hard. That's why I'm so excited about this fight. But gun to your head, Who would you think?
I think Fakhretdinov, if I'm really honest.
With the grappling is what I would be thinking. I think his grappling is just going to be able to nullify. Look, at what you don't want to do against Alessio Zaleski is to fight at range and allow him to get comfortable in his stance and in his striking, and where he can just unleash kind of weird, unorthodox strikes. I think if you're Fakhretdinov here, yeah, you can play around with it a little bit, but you've got to kind of come in with offbeat takedown attempts, maybe offbeat strikes. You've got to put Alessio Zaleski on the back foot up against the cage, and he's a fairly prominent grappler. But I'm excited to see if he can do that. And I mean, if he does do that, it's definitely, if he makes it look easy, I think sound the alarms is what we will say. We'll discuss that again on the breakdown on Tuesday. Moving on from that, we've got to stop at Modestas Bukauskas. He takes on Vito Petrino, 9-0. Look at Modestas. Modestas has been very successful since he came back to the UFC. Me and Graham spoke about it on the bonus episode on Patreon this week, just briefly about this fight and about Modestas. And we got to give him credit for, number one, finding his way back into the UFC, but not only just finding his way back into the UFC after being cut, it's coming back and it's putting together a little bit of a win streak. And a good win against Tyson Pedro and another good win against Zach Paugo has led him to an undefeated prospect in Vito Petrino. And you've got to have high hopes for Modestas coming on into this fight too, based off what we've seen. And it's a good building fight for him as well. But, very good to see him back in that career resurgence as well, Harry.
Yeah, I agree. I think for Bukauskas, this is one of those where his second run in the UFC, he's looking better and more improved, but there is so much more we need to see from him. Like he looked a little bit gun shy in his Cage Warriors performances. He's managed to win that title back. He's come back in, and so he's put a couple of good performances together. But Zach Paugo, he really should have been getting out of there, right? And whilst it's one of those things where, okay, if he's warming up, and that's fine, and he wants to solidify himself back in the UFC, and he's got a couple of wins now, fair play. Tyson Pedro is a great name, but now let's see it now. If Modestas Bukauskas is going to capitalize on the potential that we think he has. Again, from what we've seen right now, I'm certainly not telling him that he's going to be anywhere near a title shot. I'm not even sure he gets to single digits in the light heavyweight division. But if he's going to start putting wins together and he's going to start bringing everything together from a skills perspective, now is when we need to see it. An undefeated prospect, that's how you start to raise your profile within the UFC. And so this is, if Modestas Bukauskas wants to start shooting up and elevating into the divisional rankings, this is a fight that he absolutely must win.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore with that, Harry. Very well said. Moving on, we'll quick stop at the last two fights here. One more we will kind of stop and talk about a little bit more. That's Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes, 115. I mean, the only thing I want to ask you here is that, gun to the head, what's going to be the result of this fight? No winner, no loser. What's going to be the result, Harry?
Split decision.
Yeah, if Angie Hill is in there, she's going to be causing a little bit of controversy on the scorecard. She is a decision machine, winning and losing those. So I'm sure this will be no different as well. I don't know, with Angie, it's like I don't mind Angela Hill. She goes out there, she does her thing. Interesting to see how she does against Denise Gomes in that fight. Montserrat Ruiz has added on an extra name. Montserrat Conejo Ruiz right now. So she must have been married or something like that with that name. I'm not too sure. Fair play to her. Congrats. Takes on Eduardo Moura, a 9-0 prospect coming out of Brazil there. Mexico versus Brazil. That's also in the 115-pound division. We won't stop there, but we will stop on the first fight of the night. And that's Koke Fernandes versus Mark Diakiese. And here we have just a random Mark Diakiese fight thrown on the bottom of a Brazil card. This makes no sense. But this is it might be the first night fight on this card. It might not go unnoticed from the masses, Harry, but this is an absolutely monumental fight for Mark Diakiese, who has lost his last two inside the UFC, who has his back against the wall. His kind of recent record has been 2 losses, 2 wins, and now we're back on the 2 losses column. He really, really needs to win this fight. In my opinion, this is a shit or get off the pot kind of a fight for Mark Diakiese. I think he has to win this fight if he wants to keep his UFC job, and that adds a lot of pressure onto this fight for him, and it adds a lot of meaning to this fight as well for anyone who's watching.
Look, I think the Joel Alvarez loss was quite unfortunate, right? He was certainly fighting well. He was looking great against somebody that we are very high on in Joel Alvarez. Clash of heads, gets wobbled, gets taken down, Das choke, cool, no problem. The Michael Johnson loss was just a lack of fight IQ. Like I again felt Mark Diakiese at this juncture of his career is just so strange, right? He's only 30 years of age, but it feels like he's been around forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And 16-7 is just not really. He's a 50-50 fighter in the UFC. That's not his skill set. Like, he's a very, very, very solid fighter. And so this Fernandes, Fernandes, this Fernandes fella, like, I don't know much about him. I've not been able to watch any tape on him before we did this, but Mark Diakiese, like, this is a fight he absolutely has to go out and just demolish this fella. Like, he absolutely has to go out and just absolutely demolish him. We have seen how well-rounded he is all the way back from the Timu Pakalan knockout. We've seen the flashy kicks. We've seen the crazy distance ranges. We've seen the head kicks. We've seen the flying knees. We've seen the Joe Duffy performances. We've seen him against Damir Hadzovic just have a great performance. The Borshev performance was fantastic. And I don't know. It's so difficult to know with Mark Diakiese what you're going to get, you know? And if he comes out and he's on his P's and Q's and he's ready for this fight, he should demolish this fella, you know, just on experience alone. But if he comes out and, you know, Quay Fernandes has the bit between his teeth, we saw it against Rafael Alves on his, like, UFC first or second fight. He can just run people over sometimes, you know? And I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're dead right in what you're saying. It's just that, look, it's been a mixed bag of results from him, a mixed performances, and I think his record shows that. And look, you mentioned the clash of the heads, and yes, it was unlucky, and yes, that fight could have went in a different way, but you know who doesn't give a fuck about all of that stuff? That's the UFC when they're looking who they're going to keep and who they're not going to keep. And if they're looking at Mark Diakiese as a guy on a 3-fight losing streak, he's going to be on the chopping block no matter what the circumstances were around his wins and losses. And that's unfortunate because I think at this stage of his career, like you said, he's a better fighter than at this stage of his career at just 30, fighting for his job in the UFC on a kind of throwaway fight on a Brazilian card. So I hope he goes out there, gets the job done and showcases his abilities. It'll be interesting to see what he does. Like, I mean, you're never going to have an easy fight against a Brazilian in Brazil with that crowd on your back as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with all the hype. And that wraps us up, Harry. A quick blast through the UFC São Paulo card, which will take place this Saturday. Like I said, we shall return to break down this card from top to tail. I was going to say we will not skip any fight, but there are some fights we do skip. If we don't talk about a fight on the breakdown, that means that fight has been absolutely cat-Melosian bad, like absolutely dreadful. And we did it. What did we do with the last one? Trevor Peak. Harry will wave the arm of death, and we shall move on. But we don't see it. We don't see it as often as we used to, which proves the fact that we're seeing these decent cards. Look, while we were high on Francis Ngannou at the start of this card, as I've been talking my way down through it, there's lots of different and kind of good little storylines to be taken from this. Lots of good matchups as well that we can enjoy on Saturday. Until then, and until the breakdowns, we shall see you at BJJ_Harry Powell, at O'Neil MMA. Give us an old follow. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we will see you next week.